This presentation is on Simone de Beauvoir's The Second Sex. The Second Sex was published in 1949, first represented as a biology book rather than a humanities book, and to this day it is thought to be one of the most influential liberatory tools of our time. Now, Beauvoir addresses two main important issues. The first is the importance of identifying one's assumptions. That is, to treat such assumptions as prejudices and put them on the back burner until you can validate them with your own personal experience. And the second is how freedom is important and is pivotal in defining a human. Now, what is woman? This is a question that Beauvoir strives to answer throughout the whole text, and she summarizes it in one blunt quote. And that is, one is not born woman, one becomes one. Essentially, it is not nature that defines woman, it is woman who defines herself. Basically, its existence precedes essence, and we should not be defined by biological or psychological destiny. She then discusses how the definition of woman has been categorized by two observations, and one is that childhood creates something within the woman that is not innate, such as what I mentioned before is she's not born one, she becomes one. And the second is the product of historical occurrences and practices, that man has defined what it means to be human. Overall, she states that there is no adequate answer, and because of fundamental ambiguity marks the feminine being. And Beauvoir herself didn't declare herself feminist until 1972, when she started helping the second wave feminist movement because she believed women were progressing too slow. She herself defined a feminist as not someone who thinks women are better than men, or that men are inherently bad, or that men and women are identically equal in any sense. A feminist is someone that feels that your gender is not by itself a good reason to prohibit someone from doing something. It's allowing each person to be an unautonomous being or agent, verbalizing their own decisions and opinions. Now, the one versus the other. Now, Beauvoir discusses that the man is characterized as the one, and woman is the other. The one is the default, the masculine way to be, the primary, the subject, the one that takes action, has preferences, and has goals, is automatically valid and correct, and they possess autonomy and agency, and they have control over themselves, whereas the woman, the exception, the dependent, the secondary, the object, it takes the orders, it has no desires, it has no goals, they're used by the subjects, and they play a role in satisfying the preferences of the subjects. Now, to go on versus subject versus the object further. For subjectivity to exist, the other must be identified. To understand man, we also must consider what he lacks. And Beauvoir tries to point out that no one identifies themselves as the one without identifying the other. Again, if you need to represent the subjectivity, you must first identify the other. And she explains this very well in one of her quotes, because she is defined and differentiated with reference to man, and not he with reference to her. She is the incidental, the inessential, as opposed to the essential. He is subject, he is the absolute, she is the other. Now, identifying biological differences. Beauvoir states heavily that biological differences cannot be ignored. For example, woman must carry and birth the child, but this does not identify the difference in status. Men are not equipped to handle said birthing or said carrying of the child, but they are equipped to raise the child. It does not, just because we are built with certain parts, does not immediately seclude us from certain opportunities. Now, finding origins of subjugation. Now, compared to the subjugation of other cultures, such as African American or the Native American culture, the subjugation of women cannot be pinpointed historically. Women throughout history have always been subjugated. And because of this, this gives women the appearance of necessity, that women in the role of the other is not natural, and is something embedded in us through historical process. And this is something that Beauvoir tries to strive home, that us in the role as the other is something that has been pushed into our psyche. That is not something that is inbred into us. That is something that we strive through social contact, not something that's innate in us. And it's not just the problem that women strive for equality and are hurt by a lack of equality, but that men are hurting themselves by placing themselves in a role of leadership and dominance. Basically, instead of working with us, they're working above us, finding that sense of superiority. Instead of instead of helping themselves, they're hurting themselves by not treating us with a sense of validation in terms of not being the other. We should all be the one. Now, why have women always been the other? Well, there's a multitude of reasons. There's religious influences, psychological, anti-feminist aspect, which is the whole equal but different. But these factors are only perpetuating the subordinate role for women, and it's not equal at all. The doctrine, Beauvoir goes on to explain the doctrine of equal but different, and she believes it is completely identical to equal but separate. And she starts referencing the Jim Crow laws, and history shows from the Jim Crow laws that segregation by equality is just another aspect of discrimination. And referencing the Moodle reading that our professor put up, we can see that there's a quote from there that equality is not a synonym for sameness. And this is something that Beauvoir tries to strive for in terms of getting the point across. Now, why do women themselves keep accepting the role of being the other? Well, to quote Rousseau and Freud, both view femininity as naturally submissive. And this, in a sense, is a nurturing inferiority. And it comes as a result of being told you are inferior, therefore you will become inferior. But remember, Beauvoir believes that this is not natural. She believes that we become the labels that are placed upon us. And she poses the question, well, why do men want to keep women in the other? And to quote her, she goes, "Most men took it as a personal insult, the information I had told about the frigidity of women. They wanted to imagine that they could dispense pleasure whenever and to whomever they pleased. To doubt such powers on their part was to castrate them." And this is Beauvoir's description of how men felt in reaction to her text. Basically, they feel entitled with a sense of superiority when possessing this control over a woman. Now, to continue on, is women also restrain themselves as a subordinate position. And this change would require women to renounce all the quote-unquote perks they receive when subordinate. And it's men provide the safety and men provide the protection. And she doesn't need to find meaning in her life. There is already. She is the one that assists him. She plays the role in him finding his goals, and that is, in her mind, her role, her meaning in life. When you take that away, what else is there? In many ways, it was easier for one to accept man making the decision because the woman would be too afraid or too scared to make such a decision. And to go on is men would place a sense of, or Freud in particular, I should say, in reference to Freud, he has this castration complex in which he would describe little girls feeling a sense of inadequacy because they didn't possess a penis. And Beauvoir's reaction to this was, the two essential objectifications that may be raised against this view is derived from the fact that Freud based it upon a masculine model. He assumes that women feel she is a mutilated man. Basically, what she's trying to say is male is considered the normal, but women don't necessarily want a penis. They want what the penis represents. Now, the final thoughts to take home. Women have been viewed as an object of study from a male perspective since the beginning of time, and gender by itself is not a reason to inhibit an individual from pursuing something. And just because you're acknowledging that women are different from the man, does not mean that you have to concede that women are lesser than men. And we can change what it means to be woman. And to quote Beauvoir, not only can we, but we should.